Hey guys, I'm Katie,
And I'm Ryan.
and you're listening to The List, where we're watching IMDb's top 100 greatest movies of all time, and we're letting you know which ones are bucket list worthy movies. This week, we're discussing 1956 Giant. Giant stars Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, and James Dean. So it was a very star studded movie.
Had some giant stars in Giant.
Womp womp. I remember when the credits went up, you were like, Rock Hudson. And then you were like, Elizabeth Taylor. And then you're like, James Dean. so, so it's definitely a star studded movie.
And Rock Hudson is like 6'5". He's also a giant.
Tall. He like towered over everybody. It was crazy. You would think you're on a set with James Dean, you're not going to feel like the biggest guy on set. Not that James Dean is tall, but he's James Dean. He's going to make you feel small, I feel like.
Maybe. I don't
You don't
I don't
think?
know. No, I mean, he was only in 3 films before he died. So
You feel like...
this was the last film he ever made.
Yes. You're getting a little ahead of me here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I spoiling?
You're spoiling my
fun
facts for today. I'll give you a little taste of what this movie is about in the form of a very small summary. Set in Texas, the film tells the story of a ranching family and their struggles with love, ambition, and societal changes. I feel like you can't.
That is a very vague description of this.
It's very vague. Let me tell you why.
Giant of a movie that's also 3.5 hours long.
Let me tell you why I went vague with the description, is because I feel like at the heart of it, this story is just kind of an overview of these people's lives. It's just like watching them live. And the plot is not outside of their character arcs, really. And so I feel like it genuinely is just a movie about two people falling in love and then the stretch of life that we get to watch them live. Over 3.5 hours. It is a very long movie.
It didn't feel long to me, though.
No, it did not.
It was actually really enjoyable. I did not feel bored. Very rarely did I feel bored at all.
I don't think I did feel bored at all.
There was a little part towards the second act that I was kind of like, thought it was just a little bit down. But then third act picked back up. I was right back into it. But otherwise, really good. Didn't feel like the time was running too slowly or anything. Yeah. It was just right.
It's a hard thing to keep people invested for 3 hours, and especially in something that's not plot heavy. Very difficult to keep people invested for that long. I think the director did a good job.
I think part of it was because every time I thought I knew what was going to happen, they subverted my expectations by doing something. I was like, well, this is not going where I thought it was going. All right. Okay, yeah. I know where this is going now. Nope, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so it kept me interested a long ways.
Yeah, I agree. You think you know where the beat of the story is taking you, and you're surprised every time. And then that little twist and turn on what you're expecting keeps you invested until you find out what's actually going on. And then, hey, here's another one. Hey, here's another one. Mm-hmm. It's never what you expect. You're right. I never knew what was coming next in this movie. I thought I did, but I was wrong every time.
Same.
You said it a couple of times. You were like, wow, that was not what I thought was going to happen. So this movie was directed by George Stevens, who did a really wonderful job directing this 3-hour-long movie and making you want to watch. Do you know what other movie on our list he directed?
I can't remember. No, sorry.
I'll give you a clue. Shane.
That's right. I guess you're right. He did. Yeah. He did do Shane.
He did.
And that was the worst clue ever because it was actually the answer. It wasn't a clue.
Best clue ever? Best clue ever then?
I don't think you know what a clue is.
Are you trying to say I don't have a clue?
You don't have a clue what a clue is.
So George Stevens did direct this movie. The movie itself was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, and it only won one, which was Best Director. When you think about it,
I'm
don't you think
surprised.
that's kind of like the best Academy Award you can win? Because the director is over everything. And so if the director does a good job, didn't you like therefore win every other one, even if you didn't technically?
I mean, I see merit in your argument there, actually. I think if you're the director and you win Best Director, then you're like, yeah, I
That's the
won
best
everything.
Academy Award.
Hmm.
On the flip side, if you win an enemy, if you win any Academy Award, didn't the director kind of win anyway because he's responsible for everything that happens on set?
I guess he has the final say in everything. So, yes, his hand touches everything.
I'm very good at mental gymnastics. I can get there eventually.
Doing enough flips through the hoops,
Yeah, you get
you'll
there.
get there.
Okay. So I do have some facts about this movie, only a few of which have been spoiled by Ryan. In 2005, the Library of Congress deemed it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and it was preserved in the United States National Film Registry.
I actually watched the interview with that, actually.
Really?
Yeah. It
When'd you
was
watch
really
that?
a couple days ago. I
Okay.
watched George Stephen Jr., the director's son, was actually there along with Steven Spielberg and two other panelists. And I can't remember. And they were talking about the film. One of the things that George Stephen Jr. said was that I guess he had just gotten out of the military at that time. And so his dad gave him a job on set. And him and James Dean were approximately the same age.
Okay.
And so they kind of got to know each other, hung out a little bit. And I guess during the filming of this movie, the director was like, James, I know you like to race cars. You are not allowed to race cars during the filming
Wow.
of this because you will put 400 people out of work. And he
You,
was very compliant with that.
yeah.
But I guess James Dean got done filming all his parts a little earlier than the rest of the
Yes.
crew, and so he went and bought a Spider Roadster
Mm-hmm.
and took George Stevens Jr. on a joyride in the middle of filming.
Yeah.
And he tells a story about how they just came back and they just kind of looked at each other like, yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And just 3 weeks later, James Dean was killed in a car wreck.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Did you read my notebook?
I did not.
Is that where you're getting all your fun facts from today?
No, that's just what I watched on.
Interesting. I'm happy for
YouTube.
you. I don't at all feel like my thunder was
Tell
stolen.
me what your next one is, and I'll steal it.
Okay, great. I'll whisper it to you. That is super interesting, though, that the director was basically like, you can't do this. You cannot come this far in filming and then race and die or get hurt. And then all of these people are screwed over, basically.
Yeah, and this movie went way over budget was another part of it. It was only like a $2 million budget, and they went up to like $5 million. But it still grossed a lot in theaters.
Yeah, I have a, yes.
Is that your second one? No way. You're killing.
It's coming
You're
up.
kidding me. Go ahead.
I'm not. So I will say one of the reasons it cost so much money is that house. They shipped it to be filmed on location. Like they
really?
Shipped it on a whole bunch of train cars.
I was wondering if that was a set build because I was like, or at least the exterior.
Well, the
I was
exterior
like, this
is
looks like a
real.
legit house.
Yes, so they shipped the outside of the house,
and the inside
of the house was filmed in a studio.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but the outside of the house was there.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do have some things listed here that you've already said. This was the last film. Oh, sorry.
Was it filmed in Texas? Do you know?
Yes,
it was.
It was filmed in Texas. Some in Texas, some on most on location, and I have some interesting facts about that coming up. But I will say this is the last film that James Dean completed before his death in a car accident. The director wouldn't let him race during filming. We covered that. He died. I have that he died 1 week after filming, but you're saying it was 3 weeks later?
Well, I don't know that's what George Stevens Jr.
Okay,
said.
yeah.
So, his timeline may be a little bit different
Mm,
just because he's not looking at the exact date
yeah.
or whatever, but it was very, very soon after he took a joyride with him.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to a relevant fact. Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean became like best friends on the set. They grew super close together, spent a lot of time together, late night talks, and just became really close friends. She grew so close to him. So you said Dean had finished filming a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
So he was done filming and went off to race, but other people were still filming. And Elizabeth Taylor was one of them. And she was so distraught when he died that they had to give her 2 weeks off while she was hospitalized for
Oh, wow.
depression and just grief. She was
That's really
very
sad.
hurt
Yeah.
when he passed. They grew really close together. Like they would go on car rides together, not racing. They would stay up really late at night, and they said they got mad. I can't remember if it was James Dean and Elizabeth Taylor, but one day James Dean and someone else got so mad at the director that they ate like 12 Milky Ways and 6 Pepsis, and like they binge ate all that night. And I don't know why, if it was like how that affected the director, but that's what they said that they did. So
That's funny.
she and James Dean were very close, and she was very upset when he passed away. And then unfortunately, she had to come back and finish filming
Hmm.
after losing one of her closest friends and a coworker. So I imagine that was extremely difficult.
Supposedly, her and Rock Hudson would have dinner almost every night,
Yeah,
and she would go over there. Uh, I guess they had houses that they rented there,
yeah,
and she would go over into his patio, and they would have dinner every night. And I
just hang
guess
out.
a lot of the locals would ride by and be like, "Hey, what are they doing?
Okay,
Who's?"
so I'll get to that in a second.
I really am
Speaking,
spoiling all
you
of your
really
stuff.
are. This is what happens when we're both prepared. It's a good thing. um, Speaking of relationships on set, Rock Hudson and James Dean didn't get along. There were rumors that were saying it was because James Dean rejected Rock Hudson's advances, but that's only what some people say. Other people say it was because Hudson found him very unprofessional, like super unprofessional, and it like irritated him so much he didn't even want to be around them.
Mm.
But they did not get along. So
Oh,
apparently Elizabeth Taylor was the go-between, buddies with
gotcha.
both of them, and um, yeah. So I can move on to the stuff about the locals, because this was filmed on location, and we talk a lot about directors who have a super closed set. But this director refused a closed set and instead encouraged people from the town to wander around the set and to talk to the stars and to talk to the actors, and to take parts as extras and even use them as dialogue coaches.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So
I
they were
think
very
that's
comfy.
pretty unique. I don't
Yeah.
hear that happening very often, I guess.
No, especially not now. I can't imagine that happening now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like, the vibes on this movie are going to be immaculate and you're going to help it happen. We're going to feel like Texans here. So, um, also James Dean during his downtime would hire locals to teach him how to be like a cowboy. And he worked with them to learn how to handle, I don't know how to say this, I've only ever read it, a lariat
Hmm.
and his hat until he could do it like he had been doing it all his life.
Yeah,
And he did.
I did see where he
He was
had a
toying
guy
with that.
teaching him how to use the lariat and that little twirling thing that he came up with. He came up with that on his own that he would do on set. The little lariat that he was just swinging
Yeah.
around.
And he
That
handled
was
it like,
his little touch to the movie.
yeah,
Not directed at all.
right. I like that. When an actor gets so into a character that they know
Create
something
their
about
own
them.
little
Yeah.
quirks.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. It was one of the highest grossing films of 1956. So even though it cost a lot of money, it ended up making a ton of money in return. So it was a huge success, which is wonderful because it was well deserved. Ivan Moffat, the screenwriter, was awarded the Writers Guild of America's award for Best Written American Drama. And the last thing I have is that James Dean refused makeup for his scenes where he was aged up and said that a 45-year-old man wasn't made up to look like a 40-year-old man. You knew it by the way he acted and spoke, by his mannerisms. And he was like, I don't need makeup for it. I'm just going to act like a 40-year-old man.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson both had makeup, and she was like 23 years old when they did
and
this
they made
film.
her look old. They did.
They did a pretty good job. I mean,
I think
you could
so,
tell
too.
the graying in the hair was a little overboard,
Intense.
but
yeah,
they did a good job.
I will say that they said that at this time, most of the time, what happened was they would hire younger actors and then hire older actors. Most of the time, it wasn't that the same actors played both ages.
Yeah.
But that for this movie, they specifically were like, we're going to use the same people and we're just going to age them up. We're going to start with really young people and age them up.
George Stevens Jr., they asked him a question about that, and he mentioned something about that his father did not want older people to play the younger versions of the characters because he thought that it threw off the suspension of disbelief to see a really older gentleman playing, a 20-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided to make them all younger and age them up. And you've mentioned some stuff about that when we've watched some of the other movies. You're like,
it takes me out of it in a heartbeat. I'm like, you're 90.
Yeah.
Why are you playing a 20-year-old?
Yeah.
Does mess up my
Doodle
suspension of
Dandy,
disbelief.
he was definitely 50 years old playing a 19-year-old, and it was not believable at all. And some other movies.
Yankee Doodle Dandy is probably the
choice.
worst offender we've watched so far, I feel like.
Absolutely.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. Okay, so this movie is kind of, I don't even want to say a slice of life, but it is kind of just a slice of life movie about Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor. And it explores a lot of themes like family dynamics, and there's a lot about racial tensions and gender roles. It tackles a lot of stuff that I don't know that was being tackled in 1956. So
definitely not.
Yeah. So I imagine it was a very hard-hitting movie at the time and refreshing to see now, that they didn't glaze over like, difficult topics. So what did you think story-wise? How did you feel about this movie?
I kind of mentioned it. I like the story. Like, it's a long movie, but I did not feel bored at all. I think there's a little lull in the second act, but it wasn't serious where I lost interest or anything in the movie. And it was really just setting it up for the third act. And so I thought it was really great. I agree with you that this is mostly a story about a couple and their journey through life and the struggles and the adaptations that two strong-headed, independent people go through, and the adjustments that they have to make to not only adjust with the times and the changing world that they live in, but also with each other. And I thought they did a really good job of portraying that. There's a lot of other subplots as well, with James Dean's character and the ranch and their children that go along with that. And those just add richness to their story. I thought it was interesting that you kind of start off with these two characters who are rivals, and one is a giant success. He's got a 500,000 acre cattle ranch, extremely successful and rich. And then you have this ranch hand that's working for him who is the low guy on the totem pole, and how those roles kind of reverse. And then towards the end of the movie, they reverse back. And so the giant becomes little and the little guy becomes a giant and vice versa. So I think that was, there's some symbolism there. I'm not sure what it means exactly yet, but I'm still rolling it over. But it was interesting. I liked it.
What
If I
would you score
had to
it?
give it a score,
You do.
I would. You're right, I do. I would give it, I think, an 8.3.
Wow. Okay. I'm surprised it's that low, actually. Interesting.
The only reason it's probably so low is that there's not a clear goal for any of the characters. It's like you said, it's a different story. It's a slice of life. It's not good triumph over evil type of deal. It's a little harder story to follow sometimes. But I was very interested. What would you
Well, first off, I
rate
think
it?
all your comments are valid. And I think your scoring is valid, even though mm, I'm going to score differently.
Okay.
I understand why you scored the way you did. I adored the story. I absolutely loved it. It is exactly my kind of story. I don't care what's going on. Like, I want to read about people living their life. I want to watch about people living their life. I love those kinds of stories. And a
And I
lot of
like those too,
times,
but
yeah,
I like the two meshed together where
most
there's
people do.
a clear goal and then there's also insight into
Yes.
progression of life into
Yeah.
that and how they change with that.
And most people do like that. And in fact, in publishing right now, unless you're writing something very literary, you can't write stories like this. You just can't. They won't sell. And these kind of stories are called quiet stories. They're my absolute favorite. But that's why I say your scoring is valid, is because most people are going to want both things together. And I understand that. Me, however, I could consume only this type of media and be thrilled. I loved it. And most of the time, what happens is you get one thing from these types of movies or books. Like, you'll get a romance where you get to watch a couple fall in love and then have a problem and then fall in love again, and then their story's over. What I loved about this is we got to see the beginning of the romance. We got to watch them fall in love with each other, get married, adjust to being married together, have children, have their children grow up, adjust to being parents with kids out of the house, and still trying to figure each other out and growing alongside each other. It wasn't just confined to one part of their life. We got to watch all of it. And my other issue is with stories like this is often they ruin it, either with an affair, or they fall out of love, or they just don't want to try anymore, or somebody dies. All valid methods of storytelling. But what was so refreshing is that this entire movie was just about two people who loved one another and had to fight to continue loving one another, and not due to any external factors, but just due to life and how you change
Life
at
and their
every
own
avenue.
selfishness
Yeah,
and
well, I
how they
mean,
adjusted to that sometimes.
it's human to be selfish. It's human to think about yourself. And it's also very human to change through different parts of your life. And instead of changing and growing apart, even though it's very
They
difficult
changed and grew
at some
together.
point, they changed and grew together. And what I loved about this is that neither one of them, though they both gave a little, nobody gave up who they were. Nobody changed to the point that they weren't themselves anymore. They were still these two characters that we loved and that we fell in love with in the beginning and knew. They just changed enough to keep growing together and to compromise here and compromise there, but not to the point where anybody lost who they were at their core. And they loved each other through all of it. I thought, what a refreshing story to just see two people fall in love and grow together, and to just watch what they go through. And I loved all of the real life examples of, not only having I don't want to say hardships. They didn't really have any hardships. Having fights, the fights that come along with living with somebody for 50 years of your life. You also got to see them go from having little kids and having to co-parent together with little kids, even though they butted heads with that. And then co-parenting teenagers where they were like trying to be close to their kids and then, come back together as a team and parent them together. And then we also got to see them when the kids finally left and they had to learn that they had no control over what their kids did anymore. And they just kind of had to deal with that. Even if they thought the decisions they were making were wrong, they had to go, well, these are real life human beings who get to make their own choices and I don't get to control that anymore. I loved it. It was fantastic. And then, like you said, to add to the richness of it, like adding walnuts to brownies, which are already great.
It's a terrible analogy.
I
Nobody likes
love
that.
walnuts and brownies.
Marshmallows and brownies.
Well, with this movie, throw in marshmallows and walnuts. So much richness in there.
They covered a wide range of topics that I'm sure were controversial for that time and era. As far as the racism part that went along with that in the Hispanic community there in Texas.
Yeah.
The I don't know how you even say it in English. Machismo.
Yeah.
Machismo. And there's some feminist topics in there as well. There's so much in there.
So much. And I love, speaking of the kind of feminist topics, this just makes me think of it. They have this moment where he's very macho and like, this is a man's thing. And Elizabeth Taylor is basically like, okay, Neanderthal, whatever. Me no have brain, me just pretty girl. And she throws a fit, rightfully so. And later on that night, she's like, they're kind of arguing and she's like, you knew who I was when you married me. You fell in love with a bright, outspoken, snarky girl. I didn't hide any of this from you. You knew the moment you saw me what I was like, and you fell in love with me. So what are you doing now? And he like tries to leave the room and she's like, you are married to me. Get your butt back in here. You're not going anywhere. And they're both kind of like, she's like, I could have handled it a little better. And he's like, I also could have handled it a little better. And I just thought it was great. It was so great. To me, this story is a 9.5, if not a little bit higher. I almost want to say like 9.7. I loved this story.
Cool.
What were your thoughts on the acting?
I mean, you got some hard-hitting, star-studded acting in there. Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, James Dean, all really great.
How can you go wrong with that?
All really great. Even just some of the side actors and stuff, good too.
Yeah.
I can't think of any moment that I was like, this is over the top. This is bad. It's way up there. It's probably 9.5 for me.
I agree. The acting is a 9.5. I thought all the emotions were perfectly portrayed, and it is just lovely the way they delivered their lines, the way they got their feelings across. Even the kid actors were very good. The grown-up kids were great. One of the guy who played in the other James Dean movie, Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh, Plato, the guy who played
Plato was in this movie, which was interesting that he was in at least 2 out of 3 of James Dean movies. I don't know about the third one, but
yeah, I don't either.
The acting was great. I can't find much fault there.
Score
9.5, yeah. And what do you think about the cinematography?
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Such a higher level above some of the other films that we've seen.
Yeah.
Just the whole filming in that area must have been absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
It looks like a barren wasteland.
Yeah.
90% of the time.
It does.
Just super hot, dust blowing everywhere. And then you have the contrast from out east where she's from and in Maryland.
Green.
and
Yeah.
and then it's just really good. Some of the scene that sticks out to me the most is James Dean when he comes flying in after he's discovered oil on his little plot of land that he inherited from Rock Hudson's sister.
He's covered in
And
oil.
he's just covered in oil and just like basking in the glory of his filthy richness and just rubbing it in his face. That scene, the imagery there is so like it's burned into my mind.
Yeah.
It's one of
I can
those
see it replaying in my
classic
mind.
movie scenes that I probably will never forget.
Yeah.
It is a really great visual, along with some other ones, but that one is by far to me one of the most outstanding shots in the whole movie.
What would you score it?
I'm gonna score it 9.3. It's up there.
Yeah, I think that's all valid. Like the sweeping landscapes that they had, the wide angle shots, it was great. It's in the same way that Shane was amazing, Giant was amazing. It's two completely different areas of the United States, but filmed in a very similar way where the scenery is not exactly a character, but it's almost a character. And the
Oh,
cinematography gets that
Texas is a
across to you.
character in this
Yeah.
movie. It 100% is,
Yeah.
and it performed beautifully.
Oh, all the Texans are gonna love that. But yeah, cinematography was top tier. I'd give it a 9.5 too. This has been 9.5 across the board for me so far.
It's a really great movie, and it should be. What's the wow
Yeah.
factor for you?
The wow factor for me is the marriage that's portrayed in this movie. The way that they show a real, raw, loving marriage without making you hate one of the characters, without drastically changing one of the characters, and without using external influences to break the marriage up is incredible to me. I love these kind of portrayals, especially as the characters get older. I love to see a happy older married couple succeeding and still working through whatever their issues are. I love that it's not portrayed enough. And so that's the wow factor for me. And as a whole, the story makes the wow factor a 9.5.
Wow. Okay. For me, the wow factor is just the breadth of topics that this film covers, and the cinematography and the acting.
Yeah.
It's kind of a perfect storm almost. I would give it 9.2.
So would you consider this a top 100 movie?
Oh, for sure. 100% top 100.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you?
Yes, it's a top 100 movie.
Is it a bucket list movie? That's a hard question.
Is it my bucket list movie? Yeah. Is it bucket list worthy for everyone who might listen to the podcast? That's a hard question to answer with this one.
It is difficult. It's so close. For me, it's probably if you are into cinema, like this is a bucket list movie. If you like movies and want to see a good one, this is a bucket list movie. If you're just the average moviegoer, like not super into cinema, but you enjoy a movie, this is probably not a bucket list movie.
Man, I really hate this question today. I never hate this question, and I hate this question today.
I've been like this a lot on a bunch of them.
If you asked me about this movie in the wild, if someone just walked up to me and was like, have you ever seen the movie Giant? I would be like, oh, you have to watch that movie. That's such a good movie. But would I be like, get in your car, go home, buy this movie, and watch it immediately before you do anything else? No, I don't think I would. I think in the same way that if someone asked me that question about Leap Year, which is my favorite movie of all time, I don't think Leap Year is a bucket list movie. I just think it's a movie I love. And unfortunately, I think Giant is just a movie I love. I don't think it's a bucket list movie, which really hurts to say, honestly.
I feel like if it had a little more emotional impact, that maybe it would be there. It's so close though.
And I
It is
hate that you
right
said
on the
it that
rim.
way. I hate that you said emotional impact because I want to come to its defense and be like, that movie had so much emotional
I'm
impact,
not
but
saying
did
it.
it?
I'm not saying that it didn't have emotional
Yeah,
impact,
but I hear you. You're saying
but the
it's on the
type of
line of
emotion
enough.
that I associate with a bucket list movie is like it's
It
something that
it's not
moves
evocative enough.
something deep inside,
Yeah.
right? And this is like almost there on so many levels, and
It's
it's
not.
just it's that basketball that's just circling the rim.
Yeah.
It's like, is it going to go in? Is it not going to go in? And that's kind of where it is for me. And so I'm going to probably say this is not a bucket list movie for me personally, but I could see
Yeah.
how for a lot of people it absolutely would be.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to agree with that. I don't let myself think about that question until you ask it to me. Like I make myself not decide until the
There's
question is
there's some that
asked.
I see and I'm like,
This is a bucket list movie.
yes,
Yeah.
this one is very hard to judge.
Man,
I,
that's
I'm going to say no, but I really think that it's right there. It's
I
closer
think
than
so
any other
too.
movie that we've watched lately to be there.
And it's interesting that I would sit down and watch this movie again tonight. I would sit down and rewatch this movie. And
I do want to do a rewatch at some point just
yeah,
to hone in on some different aspects of the movie. I think it's a good movie to study and to watch. It's a great
man,
film.
it was a good movie. That's a bummer. I feel a little bit like I just kicked somebody's dog.
I know I kind of felt bad about it too, but
Yeah,
got to be honest
it's
with
true,
myself.
right?
I still have The Green Mile as number 1. Last week I put Shane onto the number 10 spot. I think Giant is definitely gonna knock Shane off the list.
Oh, Shane.
Shane is by.
Goodbye, Shane.
Is this, man? It's so Pulp
It's
Fiction
hard.
screws everything up
It
for me. It is
does.
such
Because Pulp Fiction is
a
such a wild
weird
card.
wild card movie
Yeah,
that
it
it makes it
is.
so difficult to put on here.
Like instead of
I
even saying
I
it's app
actually, oh gosh, I enjoyed both of those movies, but in a completely different way.
yeah.
I'm just gonna put Giant as number 10. It probably deserves to be up at number 8 spot, to be honest with you. But
Interesting.
that's where I'm going to leave it.
The thing with Pulp Fiction is it's like you can't even say it's like apples versus oranges. You have to be like it's apples versus fireworks. Like they're so
Yeah,
different.
apples
How do you compare it?
and penguins.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's
No,
so
you're exactly right.
yeah.
Okay. So my list currently has Green Mile at number 1, Good Will Hunting, Third Man, Double Indemnity, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Pulp Fiction, Wuthering Heights, Rebel Without a Cause, Rear Window, and Nashville. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a sad day. I hate to break this to Ryan, who's going to be utterly devastated by the news, but Nashville is leaving my list. So sorry to say it. So while I can't say that Giant is a bucket list movie, I can say that it is now one of my favorite movies I've ever watched. I loved.
This is from a woman that had not seen a movie before 1980 basically. Look at the growth here, people.
I'm
Look at
telling
it.
you. I'm very proud of myself for sitting and watching a movie. I'm so cultured. Okay. Um this is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. And while maybe like if I was giving out awards or something, I wouldn't rank it this high when it comes down to enjoyability. I am going to say
Whoa.
that this is going in my number 3 spot.
Whoa.
I really,
I didn't see that coming.
really
Above
loved
Third
this
Man,
movie.
even.
Above Third Man, which has been in my heart since we watched it, basically. But yeah, I'm going to put Giant at number 3, just below The Green Mile and Good Will Hunting. And the reason that it's below those is because of that oomph or that emotional impact that you were talking about
That's
that Giant
crazy.
just didn't quite have for me.
So you're
But
telling me that Third Man and Double Indemnity, which you both said were bucket list movies,
yes,
are below a non-bucket list movie.
right, because the top 10 list for me isn't about if these are bucket list movies for other people. It's about my enjoyability of these movies we've watched, right? Like I enjoyed and was touched more by Giant than I was by a Third Man or a Double Indemnity. And if you were to sit me in a room and say, you can pick out of this list of 10, 3 movies to watch and no others, these would be the 3 movies that I would pick from that list of 10. I would be like Green Mile, Good Will Hunting, and Giant. You know,
Okay, cool.
I loved that movie. I loved that movie in a way that I don't know I will ever be able to articulate. But I adore that movie so much. The way it even sometimes had me chomping on my nails out of anxiety. Do you remember when there's a phone call to the house and Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor's grown daughter answers the phone and it's Jet? And you
Mm-hmm.
and I both at the same time went, oh no, because we thought we knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. We were subverted, but it
That
had
might have been
me.
the only time we kind of had an
We
inkling.
kind of were there, but again, it didn't quite happen like we thought it was going to. Just the
True.
way this movie took me for a ride and then also just warmed my heart. I loved it. I loved this movie, and I hope, while I didn't say it was a bucket list movie, I genuinely hope anybody who listens takes the time to watch it. I really do.
Ditto. Ditto.
Next week, we're watching Fargo.
Fargo.
Did I say it right? Fargo. We're going to watch
Fargo?
Fargo E. Aren't they Canadian?
No.
North Dakota is basically Canada.
Is it North Dakota or is it Minnesota?
I couldn't
We'll
tell
find
you.
out when we watch Fargo.
Fargo. Next week, we'll report back on whose accent was closer.
I didn't do one.
That's just the way you talk.
I didn't say Fargo.
I didn't say Fargo either.
You did say, you're like Fargo.
Fargo. It does sound like Fargo.
Fargo. You're like, I watched Fargo Rock when I was a kid.
Fraggle Rock. Oh. That's a top 10 TV show bucket list. What do Minnesotians sound like? Have you ever met somebody from Minnesota? Do you think Minnesota's real?
I don't think it's real. It's like North Dakota. Not real states. Real. It's just on the map. It's a secret military experimental
and they
state.
pay people to say they're from there.
Mm-hmm. Basically.
We'll talk about this and more on our next episode.
They created a fake football team.
Who's the football team from Minnesota?
The Vikings.
The Vikings? Nobody's ever heard of the Vikings. What would you do if you found out you were living in a Truman Show like life?
I would burn it to the ground.
But not only. It's so funny that that's what you would do, because I would be too embarrassed to say anything and I would just keep going on.
You would, what? No, you would not.
I wouldn't. No, I would not.
To even suggest such a thing.
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They put a lot of thought into it.
Such a high level of insanity that I can't even comprehend.
I mean,
you would just keep pretending you were in the Truman Show, even though you knew you weren't.
They've gone to a lot of effort to put all this together. And for me, for little old me, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I would say something.
I don't even know who you are.
Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm a hired actor.
Wow.
But what if the Truman Show was like the whole United States for you? Wouldn't that be nuts?
For one person?
Yeah.
Wow.
So then would you say something, or would you be like, that's impressive effort? Kudos, you guys.
I would burn it all down.
I'm
pretty sure it'd be tough to do if the entire country was out for me. The size of the U.S.
It'd be really rough.
What I find interesting is that people from Europe can't comprehend how big the United States is. Like Texas is like bigger than half of Western Europe.
Yeah. And
probably
so like
it's only like Western Europe would probably only take up like half of Texas. Like
it's a big country.
You can go from like England to France in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And like the next town over, it takes me 30 minutes to get to, you know?
Yeah, I don't think people comprehend how big the US is until they come here from places like Europe. Like we're flying into New York City. We have 3 days. We want to go to Walt Disney World and Walt Disneyland. We're just going to pop to Florida and California and then back up to see the
take 4
Statue
days
of
to drive
Liberty.
there. Yeah. No way.
We got a little off topic there.
A little bit, but it's a giant country.
Hey-o! Way to tie it back in. Let's go, Ryan. That's my husband, y'all. He's so smart.
You're such a dork. Well, let us know whether you think you're truly in a Truman Show and what you would do.
What would you do? That's this week's question. And I'm going to put it on our Spotify question, and nobody's going to get it unless they listen to the episode. They're going to be like, why are they talking about the Truman Show? Put in the comments what you would do if you found out your life was the Truman Show.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Truman. And this has been The List. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week for Fargo. Bye.
And in case anyone's listening out there, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I like that.
That's from the Truman Show.
Oh.
Gosh. Wow. You are killing me. Absolutely killing me.
Oh my gosh. That was really funny.
Goodbye.